The wind howled across the dusty ground of Outpost 17, a lonely human colony built on the edge of a dry, alien planet. The night was cold, and the stars above blinked like quiet watchers in the sky. Inside a small metal cabin near the edge of the camp, a man named Ray sat alone, sipping hot tea and fixing an old light panel with shaky hands. He lived a quiet life, worked in the scrapyard during the day, and spent nights repairing broken tech for extra credits. He didn't talk much, didn't visit bars, and didn't trust anyone, not after what happened in the last war. People came and went, but Ray stayed out of trouble. But that night, something strange happened. A soft knock echoed from his front door. Ray froze. His hand hovered over the table where a small wrench lay. He wasn't expecting anyone. No deliveries, no neighbors, and no warnings. Just silence until that knock again. Knock. Knock. He stood up slowly, reached for the wrench, and moved to the door outside. The dust storm had died down, leaving only silence and shadows through the narrow peephole. He saw a figure standing there, small, shivering and covered in dirt. He opened the door halfway. Keeping the chain locked, "Who are you?" he asked. A soft, shaky voice replied, "Please. I'm not dangerous. I only have $3. Can I use your shower, please?" Ray blinked, confused. The figure was a woman, an alien woman. Her skin was pale green, marked with dry mud. Her eyes were large, glowing faintly blue under the moonlight. Her hair was long, tangled, and silver white. She wore old, ripped clothes that barely covered her thin frame. $3. Ray asked, still holding the wrench. She nodded weakly. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "It's all I have left. Just a shower. I'll leave after." Ray stared at her. Something didn't feel right, but not in a dangerous way. More like sad, like she had been walking through hell. He didn't trust people easily, and definitely not strangers in the middle of the night. But something in her eyes stopped him from closing the door. "Wait here," he said, and shut the door. She didn't move. Ray put the wrench down, grabbed a towel and an old robe, then unlocked the door fully. "You can use the shower," he said. "No need to pay." Her hands shook as she stepped inside. She didn't even look around, just stood there, shivering in the warm air. "Thank you." "Human," she whispered. Ray pointed toward the small bathroom near the back. "Hot water still works. Don't touch the red pipe, it leaks steam." She nodded, took the towel, and walked slowly toward the shower room. Ray heard the door close, then the sound of water rushing through old pipes. Steam rose under the door, and for a long time, nothing but silence followed. He sat down again, eyes still fixed on the hallway. He wasn't sure what he had just invited into his home. Alien refugees were common after the border wars, but most stayed in hidden camps or begging zones. Not here, not this deep in human territory. The water kept running. Then he heard it, a soft sob. She was crying, not loud, not wild, just quiet. Painful sobs behind the steam. Ray looked down at the 3 crumpled credits she had placed on his table before going in. She really meant it. She was offering everything she had, just for a warm shower, just to feel clean again. 30 minutes passed. Finally, the sound of water stopped. The door opened slowly, and she stepped out. Her hair was clean now, shining like silver threads. Her green skin glowed softly under the lights. But her eyes, those deep, glowing blue eyes, still looked tired, lost. She wore the old robe he gave her and held the towel close. She tried to hand the $3 back to him. "Please, take it," she said again. Ray shook his head. "Keep it." She looked at him like no one had ever said that to her before. Then suddenly, her legs gave out. Ray jumped from his seat and caught her before she hit the floor. Her skin was warm, her body too light, like she hadn't eaten in days. He carried her gently to the old couch and laid her down. Her breathing was slow, but steady. He sat beside her, staring at the stranger now asleep in his home. Who was she really? Where did she come from? And why did she come to him? Outside, the stars kept watching, and far off in the distance, hidden in the shadows beyond the colony walls, something moved. Something, or someone, was looking for her. The sun had not yet risen, but the sky outside Ray's cabin was turning a deep purple. He hadn't slept a single second. Not after what happened last night, the alien woman Solari. He now knew her name was still sleeping on his old couch, her breathing soft and steady beneath the thin blanket. Ray sat nearby, watching the small fire flicker in his portable heater. His hands rested on his knees. But his mind was racing. Who was she really? What was she running from? Why did her eyes look like someone who had seen too much? A soft cough broke the silence. He turned quickly. Solari was awake, her eyes barely open. "Where am I?" she whispered. "You're safe," Ray replied. Standing slowly, "My place." "You fainted last night after the shower." She blinked, trying to remember. Then she looked down at the robe wrapped around her body and pulled it tighter. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to be a burden." Ray shook his head. "You're not." "You needed help." He walked to the small kitchen and poured warm water into a metal cup. Adding a pinch of powder, cheap but full of nutrients, he handed it to her. "Drink this. You look like you haven't eaten in days." Solari accepted it with both hands, sipping slowly. Her fingers trembled. Ray noticed the scars on her wrists, faint, old, but definitely from chains. His stomach turned, but he said nothing. After a few minutes, she looked at him again. Her voice was soft, like wind through cracked glass. "Why did you let me in?" Ray leaned back in the chair and shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe because you asked. Maybe because no one else would." She smiled faintly, but there was sadness in it. "You're the first human who didn't look at me like I was filth." There was silence again. Long and heavy, the heater crackled quietly. Then she spoke again. "My name is Solari. I was born on a noble ship family of scientists and healers. We had a home orbiting Sarava 6. Beautiful gardens, music, peace." Ray listened, his eyes fixed on hers. "But during the war, everything changed," she continued, her voice trembling. "Our family was declared traitors for helping refugees. We lost our status, then our freedom." She looked down at her hands. "I was taken, sold, moved from camp to camp. Some days I cleaned floors, other days I was used for worse." Ray clenched his jaw, anger burning low in his chest. He wanted to ask who did this to her, but he didn't want to see her cry again. "I escaped 2 weeks ago," she said, "stole a transport code and jumped out near this colony. I've been hiding, begging, trying to stay clean. But they're still looking for me." Ray leaned forward. "Who?" Solari's eyes darkened. "Hunters, bounty agents. Slavers, doesn't matter the name. They wear metal armor and smell like oil. They track by scent, sound, DNA. If they find me, I'll disappear forever." Ray rubbed his face. This wasn't just a random alien asking for a shower. She was running from something real, something dangerous. He stood and walked to the window, pulling back the old curtain. Outside, the world was still quiet. But his gut said that wouldn't last long. "You can't go back out there," he said firmly. "Not alone." Solari looked up at him, confused. "But why would you help me?" "You don't even know me." Ray turned to her, his voice low but strong. "Because I've been alone too. And no one deserves to run forever." She didn't respond at first, just stared at him with wide, tired eyes. Then she whispered, "Thank you." Later that morning, Ray showed her the washroom again. She wanted to clean properly now that she could think straight. He handed her soap, a brush, and a clean towel while she was inside. Ray sat by the door not to spy, but to keep her safe. He listened to the sound of running water. And this time, it wasn't just noise. It felt peaceful. Like the past had paused for a moment. He could hear her humming, a soft alien melody. It was strange but beautiful. Something that didn't belong in his cold metal home, but somehow made it warmer. The door creaked open after a while. Solari stepped out. Her hair was damp and brushed. Falling neatly over her shoulders, the robe was tied properly now, and her skin was no longer covered in dirt. Her face was soft, clean and truly beautiful. She looked like someone who had once belonged to a royal life. Ray stood silently, surprised. Solari noticed, and a shy smile touched her lips. "Thank you for the water." "And for not asking for anything in return," he nodded. "You needed it more than I did." She stepped forward, holding something out again. "Those 3 crumpled dollars. Please take this. It's all I have, but I want you to have it." Ray looked at the money. Then at her, he gently pushed her hand back. "You keep it. You might need it later." Tears welled up in her eyes. But she didn't let them fall. Instead, she whispered, "I won't forget this, human." Just then, Ray's old warning sensor buzzed soft and low, but enough to grab his attention. He rushed to the window, squinting through the lens. Outside, in the distance, something was moving to shapes, walking slowly across the dry path. Armored, silent, scanning. "They're here," he muttered. Solari's face turned pale. Ray turned to her. His voice sharp but calm. "Go back in the shower room. There's a hidden panel behind the wall. Crawl through and wait under the floor. Don't make a sound." She nodded quickly and ran. Ray grabbed his old plasma wrench and stood near the door. His hands didn't shake. His heart didn't race. He had made his choice. If they came knocking, he wouldn't let them. The footsteps outside were slow but heavy. Each one thudded softly on the dusty ground outside Ray's door. Ray didn't move from his position. He stood silently, gripping the old plasma wrench in one hand and watching the shadow through the peephole. 2 figures, tall and armored, walked past his cabin window. Their suits were made of dull steel, scratched and stained. Their helmets had glowing red visors that scanned left and right. Like machines sniffing the wind, Ray's breath slowed. His home didn't have much, just old tools, salvaged parts. And now a secret guest hiding beneath the floorboards. Solari, that was her name. He hadn't known it until last night, but now it rang in his head like a warning and a promise. She was more than a dirty alien woman asking for a shower. She was someone hunted. Someone who had once lived in light and was now crawling through shadows. The hunters paused at his door. One of them knocked, loud and cold. Bang bang. Biandra opened the door slowly, forcing his face to stay calm. "Can I help you?" The taller one stepped forward. "We're tracking a fugitive female." His voice was flat, mechanical, but still carried weight. Green skin, silver hair. "Escaped from custody convoy 9 Beta." Ray frowned like he had no idea. "You think someone like that would come out here?" he asked. "This place smells worse than a space toilet, and I haven't seen anything but sand in days." The shorter hunter stepped closer. Visor flickering, "We traced energy used hot water flow," he said. "Someone used a shower." "Recently," Ray shrugged. "Yeah, that was me." "Needed to wash engine grease off. You want to check my soap too?" Both hunters looked at each other for a moment, then pushed past him into the cabin without asking. Ray didn't stop them. He stood still, gripping his wrench tightly behind his back. They scanned the room, opened cabinets, kicked at tool crates. One even moved toward the bathroom, but Ray stepped in his path. "I wouldn't open that pipe," he warned. "Leaking steam nearly burned my hand last week." The hunter paused, then stepped away. Minutes passed like hours. Then finally, the tall one turned back toward the door. If she's here, you'll be charged with harboring a fugitive. Ray nodded slowly. Then you better find her. They walked out without another word. The moment the door shut, Ray locked it and bolted it tight. Then he ran to the shower and knocked 3 times in rhythm on the metal wall panel. It opened silently. Solari crawled out from the hidden space. Her face was pale, lips trembling, eyes wide with fear. Ray helped her out and closed the panel behind her. "They were here," she whispered. "They're close." Ray nodded. "But they didn't find you." She sat down on the floor. Knees to her chest. "They'll come again. They don't give up. I know how they work." Ray sat across from her, leaning against the wall. "Tell me everything." "Solari," she looked up at him, eyes filled with silence, and then she began to speak. "I wasn't always like this," she said. "My name is Solari Venlay, daughter of House Ven. My people were healers, not fighters. We ran medical ships and grew healing plants in orbital gardens." Ray listened, trying to imagine it a life so different from this rusty shack. "When the war broke out between the human expansion cores and the Seerith Combine, we didn't take sides," she continued. "We helped both wounded humans, injured aliens, anyone in need." Her voice trembled, but neutrality was seen as betrayal. One day, a ship came, not from the Seerith, not from the humans, either private enforcers, claiming we were aiding the enemy. Ray's jaw tightened. "Pirates." "Worse," she whispered. "Licensed bounty clans. They had government permissions. Sold us off one by one." She pulled up her sleeve to show a faint tattoo burned into her arm numbers. "Letters, marks of ownership. I was sold to a mining camp on Skelris 3. We worked underground digging for minerals. No sun, no sky, just darkness," she said, her voice hollow. "I escaped during a riot. I ran through junk planets, trade posts, stealing clothes, lying about my name, hiding in old cargo until I got here." Ray stared at her, then quietly said, "You don't have to run anymore." "Not here." Solari looked at him, eyes filled with confusion. "Why would you do this for me?" "I'm just trouble. I brought hunters to your door." Ray shook his head. "You didn't bring trouble. Trouble's been chasing you. I'm just the guy who answered the door when you knocked." She smiled then, just a little, but real. Later that night, as they both sat by the small heater again, Solari looked out the window. "Do you ever leave this place?" "Not much," Ray replied. "No family, no friends left. Just me and my tools." "You have more than tools now," she said softly. "You have a reason to fight." He didn't answer, but deep inside, he knew she was right. He had lived in silence for so long. But now there was someone who needed him, not for what he could fix, but for who he was, and somewhere beyond the dunes. In the blackness of night, the hunters were still moving. The wind picked up again that night, brushing dust across the ground like whispers. Ray stood outside, watching the horizon turn darker than usual. There were no stars, only thick clouds, and a cold stillness in the air. Solari sat by the heater inside, her hands wrapped around a warm mug of tea. She was quiet, but her eyes kept glancing at the door, at the windows, at every sound that moved. "They're still looking, aren't they?" she asked softly. Ray nodded. "Yeah. And they'll come back, next time, maybe harder, maybe smarter." She lowered her head. "I should leave. I can't let them destroy your life. They'll ruin everything just to get to me." Ray turned to her, his voice steady. "You're not going anywhere. I made a choice, Solari. I don't back away just because things get dark." She looked at him with tired eyes. But there was something else there too, something she hadn't felt in a long time: trust. Still, they had to be ready. Ray got up, pulled a cloth from under his old floor tiles, and opened a panel hidden beneath it. Inside were old wires, rusted tools, and a narrow tunnel he had dug years ago when the border riots were still fresh in everyone's mind. "I built this a long time ago," he said. "Didn't think I'd ever use it. But now we need it." Solari crawled forward. Peeking into the tunnel, "Where does it go?" "To an old water pumping station," Ray said. "About half a mile underground, no cameras, no scans. Just dirt and silence." They spent the next hour packing supplies. Not much, just water, some food, extra clothes, and a power cell to keep the heater alive. Ray handed Solari a small flashlight and a knife. "Just in case, do you know how to use that?" he asked. "I was in a camp for 5 years," she replied. "I had to learn." Ray nodded, proud and sad at the same time. As they prepared to enter the tunnel, the warning sensor beeped again, this time louder. Closer, red light blinking against the wall. Ray looked at the screen for heat signatures approaching fast. Armored, scanning, sweeping the area like predators. "They're here," he muttered. Solari's breath caught, her hands shook. Ray grabbed her wrist and guided her into the tunnel. "Don't stop, just keep crawling till you feel the metal floor. Then wait for me there." She hesitated. "What about you?" Ray gave a small smile. "I'll stall them. I know this place better than they do." She nodded once, then disappeared into the dark tunnel. Ray closed the panel, threw a heavy crate over it, and walked back to the center of the room, his wrench in one hand, and an old electric nail gun in the other. He took a deep breath and waited. Moments later, bang bang BNG this time. They didn't knock politely. The door exploded inward, and 2 hunters stepped in with weapons drawn, their red visors glowing like demon eyes. Ray raised his hand slowly. "Careful. This is my house. I didn't invite you this time." The lead hunter scanned the room. "Where is she?" He demanded. "Who?" Ray said, playing dumb, "The neighbor's cat." The second hunter kicked over a crate. Then another. The third scanned the floor. "There's heat under the tiles," he growled. "Someone else was here." Ray chuckled. "Yeah, probably a rat. You want to arrest a rat." That was the last joke he made. The fourth hunter moved too fast, grabbed Ray by the collar and slammed him into the wall. The nail gun clattered to the floor. His vision blurred, but he didn't scream. "She's not yours to protect," the hunter hissed. "She's owned property. She was paid for." Ray's head snapped up, blood trickling from his lip. "Then maybe you should return the money to her soul," with sudden fury. He kicked over a barrel behind him, spilling flammable oil across the floor. Then he yanked a wire from the wall and sparks flew across the room. The oil caught fire instantly. The hunter shouted, stepping back, weapons raised. But the fire had cut off the room, thick smoke rising fast. Ray dropped to the floor and crawled toward the tunnel, his heart pounding, his back burned from the heat. But he didn't stop. He reached the hidden panel, pulled it open, and dropped in. The tunnel swallowing him into safety. Behind him, the cabin burned bright in the night like a warning flame. Down in the dark, Solari waited, her flashlight shaking in her hand. When Ray crawled through, coughing and gasping, she rushed to him, helped him up, held him tightly. "You're alive," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I thought I said I'd stall them," he coughed, managing a smile. "Didn't say I'd do it quietly," she laughed softly. Then cried, silent tears falling onto his shoulder. "You're risking everything for me." Ray looked at her and replied, "So are you. But I'm not going to let them take you. Not now. Not ever." They sat there together in the cold tunnel, the light flickering around them. Their old lives had burned with the house above. But in that darkness, something new began to form, a bond between The old tunnel led to a forgotten water station buried deep under the colony. It was cold, damp, and smelled like rusted metal and silence. But for Solari and Ray, it was safer than the burning cabin above. They sat on a cracked bench near a dry pipe, a small lantern flickering between them. Ray's hands were blistered from the heat. His clothes still smelled of smoke, but he didn't complain. Solari wrapped a bandage around his wrist, her fingers gentle but sure. "You should have left me," she whispered. "You didn't have to stay behind and burn your home." Ray looked at her. His voice calm. It wasn't a home anymore. "Not after they came looking for you." She swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "Still, I don't understand why you care so much. I'm just a fugitive to them. Just property." "You're not property to me," Ray said firmly. "You're a person, with a story, a name, and more courage than most I've ever met." She looked at him for a long time, like she was searching his face for a lie, but found none. Then she stood and walked toward an old panel in the wall. Behind it was a tiny sleeping chamber maintenance cot and broken screen. "This place was made for forgotten things," she said. "Like us," Ray chuckled. "Then we fit right in." They stayed underground for the next few days, sleeping in shifts, eating ration bars, and listening for footsteps above. Ray used leftover scrap to fix the heater, while Solari found a broken transmitter and began repairing it. "You know tech?" he asked one evening. "I used to help my mother build medical drones," she said with a small smile. Before they made her disappear, Ray wanted to ask more, but he didn't. Instead, he handed her a soldering tool and watched as her fingers danced over wires like music. Her mind was sharp, quicker than his, more precise. It reminded him of something he had forgotten: how it felt to work beside someone who truly cared. On the fourth day, while Ray was sleeping, Solari stood by the heater, staring at the flickering flame. Her robe was still too big, her feet bare, but her face looked brighter than before. She moved to his side quietly, knelt down, and watched him sleep for a moment. Then she whispered, "You gave me more than a shower. You gave me safety, kindness, a reason to breathe again." He stirred in his sleep, and she leaned closer. Her lips trembled as she said the words she'd held back for days. "I want to give you something back, Ray. Not just thanks, not just work, but everything I am." Ray opened his eyes slowly, catching the last of her whisper. "What did you say?" Solari blinked fast, caught off guard. "I said I want to repay you. I want to stay with you. Not as someone you hide, but as someone who belongs here." "With you." Ray sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Solari, I didn't help you because I wanted something in return." She shook her head. "I know. That's why it means so much. No one's ever looked at me the way you do. No fear, no greed. Just care." She took a shaky breath. "If you told me to leave right now, I would. But if you let me stay, I'll protect this place. I'll help you fix things. I'll work. I'll share what I know." Ray looked at her for a long time, then smiled gently. "You already gave me something." "Solari, what?" she asked. "Hope," he said. "I didn't know I needed it until you knocked on my door." She smiled back, and for the first time, her smile didn't carry sadness with it. It was soft, warm, and real. Later that night, they sat side by side, repairing the transmitter. Solari managed to pick up whispers on a nearby frequency. "There's a protest on the outer colonies," she said. "People saw what happened. Someone recorded your cabin burning. They're asking why bounty hunters are chasing unarmed civilians." Ray leaned closer. "That's good. Maybe people are finally seeing the truth." But Solari frowned. "The hunters won't care. They'll come back with stronger scans, better trackers." Ray's face hardened. "Then we'll be ready next time." She turned to him, her voice steady. "We need to build a better hiding place, deeper. Maybe behind the old vents. I can help reinforce the walls," he added. "Use scrap metal. Maybe even reroute some power lines for warmth." They talked like that for hours, planning, preparing, surviving together, and somewhere during those quiet moments, something deeper began to grow between them, not just survival or safety, but connection. Solari had offered him everything she had, not in desperation, but in gratitude, and Ray had accepted her not out of pity, but out of respect. They were no longer just a human and an alien. They were two souls who found each other in the dark. The underground station had become a kind of home. Cold and quiet, but safe. Ray and Solari worked together every day, patching wires, building traps, and reinforcing the tunnels. Every bolt they tightened felt like a promise that they wouldn't run anymore. Not from anyone, but safety doesn't last long when you're being hunted. Ray woke to a strange sound, a high-pitched hum. Like metal vibrating under pressure, he sat up, heart pounding, and looked at the transmitter Solari had been rebuilding. It glowed bright red. Solari rushed in from the far end of the tunnel, her face pale. "They've found us," she said, breathless. "They traced the heat from our backup heater." There, triangulating, Ray cursed under his breath and jumped to his feet. He grabbed the bag of emergency tools and handed her a radio. "Go to the lower shaft, past the broken stairwell. There's a hidden crawlspace under the pump motor. What about you?" she asked, eyes wide. "I'll lead them the wrong way." "I know this place better than anyone," he said. "We practiced this, remember?" She nodded, tears in her eyes, but no fear this time. "Only resolve. Don't let them catch you." Ray smirked. "They'll have to break through a whole scrap pile first," as she disappeared into the tunnel. Ray sprinted toward the upper chamber, where the old control room stood. He triggered the fake power surge trick they had wired days ago, watched as the lights flickered wildly. A decoy to confuse any heat sensors. Moments later, the metal doors above burst open. For hunters dropped down with glowing red visors and scanning equipment on their backs. One of them barked orders through a static-filled helmet. "She's here, spread out." Ray didn't wait. He ran through a side corridor, triggering a tripwire behind him. A cloud of dust and sparks filled the air. Confusing the scanners, he turned a corner, kicked a barrel down the stairs, and shouted, "Looking for someone, tinheads." The hunters chased the sound, their boots echoing like thunder through the tunnels. Ray led them through loops, dead ends, even past a working water pump that exploded in steam when he hit it with a wrench. But there were too many of them. Ray dove into a dark crawlspace, panting, hoping to loop back to Solari, but one of the hunters spotted him. "The human's here. Alive." A flash of electric shock hit his side. He groaned and collapsed, pain shooting through his ribs. They grabbed him, dragging him into the open, visors glowing like fireflies. "Where's the alien?" one asked, kicking his leg. Ray coughed, blood in his mouth. "She's long gone." "You missed her by a mile." The hunter leaned in, voice cold. "Then you'll lead us to her, or you won't breathe again." Suddenly, a loud siren blared through the tunnel. Solari had activated the emergency system. Steam vents blew open, water pipes burst, and a sharp gas cloud filled the room. Out of the fog, she appeared. Solari moved like lightning, wielding a makeshift weapon, a long pipe charged with electricity. She slammed it into the closest hunter's back. Sparks flying, he dropped to the ground, twitching. Another turned and aimed, but Ray, still on the floor, kicked his leg out. Knocking the weapon off target, Solari used the moment to strike again, slamming the pipe into his chest plate. Only two remained, and now they were backing up. Trying to regroup, Solari stood in front of Ray, panting, her eyes glowing with fury. "You won't take me again," she said, voice shaking with rage. "You won't hurt him either." The lead hunter raised a hand, but a blinding flash lit up the room. Ray had managed to reroute a live wire, shocking the wet floor where the hunters stood. Screams echoed through the tunnel as both collapsed in sparks and smoke. Then silence. Only the crackle of broken wires and the dripping of water remained. Solari dropped the pipe and rushed to Ray's side. "You're bleeding?" she whispered. He looked up at her, smiling through the pain. "Told you I wasn't gonna let them take you." She helped him up, tears in her eyes. "You nearly died. Worth it," he whispered. "For you. It's worth it." They limped back toward the deeper tunnel, leaving the wreckage behind. They didn't speak for a while, just leaned on each other, walking slowly through darkness. When they reached the safe chamber, Ray sat down, breathing heavily. Solari knelt beside him, cleaning the wound on his side. Her hands were gentle, her touch full of care. "You saved me too," he whispered. "You could have run. But you came back." She looked at him, her eyes full of emotion. "You're not just a human to me, Ray. You're the only reason I'm alive. You gave me a name again, a voice, a place to stand." Ray reached out and held her hand. "Then let's keep standing, together, outside." The colony was starting to buzz. The signal of the attack had leaked again, and people were watching. Protests had begun on two different worlds, calling out the bounty guilds and their cruelty. And deep in a forgotten station, a human and an alien, broken, bruised, but not beaten, sat side by side in the dark. They had survived, but their story was just beginning. The next morning came slow and soft. A weak sun broke through the cracks in the ground above, golden light spilling down into the hidden chamber where Ray and Solari sat wrapped in blankets, bruised but alive. Ray's side still hurt, but the bleeding had stopped. Solari had done what she could with old medkits and careful hands. She sat next to him now, silent, watching him breathe. "You should rest more," she said softly. Ray shook his head. "Can't. Not until I know we're safe." Solari looked down. "I don't think they'll come back." That last signal. It was broadcast all over the outer systems. People saw what they did. They saw me. Begging and you protecting. Ray's brow furrowed. "They'll spin it. Say we attacked first, maybe," she replied. "But there's more now. Someone out there is watching. Someone is listening." Just then, the transmitter buzzed again. Solari leaned over, adjusted the dial, and a voice crackled through. "This is Outer Reach Channel 12. Reports confirm that bounty licenses against civilian aliens have been revoked. Several guilds under review. Investigations are active. Keep safe. Stay united." Ray closed his eyes and sighed. "We did something, didn't we?" Solari smiled gently. "Yes, and you. You did more than you'll ever know." They stayed underground for one more day. Gathering strength, Ray fixed his coat, and Solari cleaned the dust from her long silver hair. When they finally stepped back onto the surface, the wind was calm, the air clear, no more patrols. No more hunters in the hills. They walked through the old colony streets quietly. Eyes watching from windows, some people whispered. Some stepped back, but others nodded. Just slightly an unspoken thank you. Word had spread. Solari, the alien woman who once had only $3 in her hand, was now a symbol of something bigger. They passed the old market where Ray used to trade parts. A merchant called out to him. "I saw the footage, Ray. That was you, huh? Burning your place down for her." Ray didn't stop walking. "Wasn't for her," he said. "Was for what's right." Solari didn't say a word, but her eyes shimmered with quiet pride. That night, they returned to a new place, small, empty house at the edge of the colony that no one claimed anymore. Ray unlocked the rusted door, stepped inside, and looked around. It wasn't much, just walls, a roof, and a cracked window, but it was theirs now. Solari stood in the middle of the room, holding something in her hand. "The same 3 crumpled dollars from that first night. I kept them," she said. "I wanted to remember who I was when I knocked on your door." Ray walked over and gently took the bills from her. He looked at them, then placed them on the shelf beside the heater. "No," he said. "Let's remember who you are now." She smiled, and the room felt brighter. Over the next few weeks, they worked hard. Solari used her skills to fix old drones and repair units for sick travelers. Ray taught her how to weld stronger supports and barter with traders. Together, they became part of the colony in a way that surprised even them. One afternoon, a little alien girl came to their door with a broken toy drone. She looked up at Solari and whispered, "Are you the lady from the video?" Solari knelt down, smiled, and nodded. "Yes, I am. Did the human really save you?" The girl asked. Solari looked over at Ray, who stood by the workbench fixing a cracked panel. She turned back to the girl and said, "No. He didn't save me." The girl blinked, confused. "He didn't." Solari smiled wider. "He gave me a chance to save myself that night." Ray and Solari sat on their new porch, the stars above shining like a silent audience. A fire burned nearby, and the air smelled like rain was coming soon. Ray leaned back and looked at the sky. "You know, I used to think I was just passing time here, waiting for nothing. And now?" Solari asked. He turned to her. "Now I know what it feels like to fight for someone, to protect something that matters." She rested her head on his shoulder. "And I know what it feels like to be seen. Not as a slave, not as property, but as a person." They didn't need more words after that. The fire crackled, the stars blinked. And for the first time in a long time, both of them felt like they belonged. All of it had started with a knock at midnight. A dirty alien girl, $3, and a human who decided to care.